Hello, I'm Evangelist Dolores Jackson. Thank you for tuning in to my channel and welcome to Light and Life Outreach Ministries. Please click the like button and also click the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any videos that I'm going to post in the future. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to do a teaching series out of a book the Lord gave me to write. The name of the book is Healing the Hurts of Yesterday. If you'd like to follow along, I encourage you to purchase a digital copy of the book. There is also a workbook that goes with it, and I encourage you to purchase that book as well. The workbook is going to have you ask yourself a series of questions that would help you get to the root cause of any issues that you may be dealing with. And at the end of each chapter is an exercise that is going to be beneficial to your healing also. Right before chapter 7 of the book, you'll find a disclaimer that simply states, I am not a psychologist, a counselor, or a health professional of any kind. I'm simply a Holy Spirit-filled believer whom the Lord uses by way of teaching, preaching, writing, and etc. So also, all material that is in chapters 7 through 11 can be referenced and validated on a website called WebMD. Now, this series is going to challenge you. It's going to make you feel uncomfortable because it's going to remind you of some things that you probably want to forget. But if you're going to heal from something, you can't run from it. You have to face it head on and deal with it. So, what I would like to do today is lay a foundation that is going to help prepare your heart and mind so that you can receive what you need and heal and leave that place of stagnation that you might be in. So, in life, we all go through things that are sometimes difficult to talk about and think about. And because it was very painful. And depending on what happened and the severity of it, it can have a very devastating effect on your life. People all over the world are wondering things such as why they can't move forward in their business, why it's so hard to conduct a healthy relationship, why the simplest goals are so hard for them to attain, and why their focus is so off. I believe this is largely due to mental pain and suffering. Um, and this is one of the key reasons why people stop growing. They've experienced so much hurt, they've never healed from it, and they found themselves stuck in a stagnant place. To be stagnant means to be without growth or change. And we know that growth is a very important part of our life because without it, you would never move forward. You would never reach your full potential. You would never fulfill the calliness on your life. And even though you live in a world that's constantly evolving, you will be able to watch but never fully participate. So let's go over a couple of the characteristics of stagnation, and that is having a lack or willingness to grow and get outside of your comfort zone, and also a fear of change or a lack of effort to make a positive change. People are stagnated because of negative thinking. They compare themselves to others. They are working on the wrong thing. They resist change, and they also take the wrong advice from people. Now, how do people become stagnated? Well, in some cases, they're uncertain about what to do in life. They feel inadequate and hopeless. They feel uncomfortable in trying new things and once again getting out of their comfort zone or safety zone. They set expectations for themselves that are unattainable. They have no goals to reach for. And lastly, they endure mental suffering. So, of these reasons that I have noted, I want to deal with the mental suffering because a lot of people are going through different things in their life mainly due to mental suffering. Okay. So, the perception is, and also I want to bring out too, when you're dealing with mental suffering, prolonged mental suffering causes mental health issues. And they cause issues such as depression, bipolar, anxiety, schizophrenia, and other mental health issues. And this is one of the key reasons why people are stuck and find it very difficult, if not impossible, to move forward in life. So I want to deal with how the heart and mind works together, because we're under the perception that we think with our mind, but we really don't think with our mind. And I'm going to go through a series, well, a few different scripture references to show you what I mean. So Proverbs 23:7 says, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he." To think here means to estimate. It means to judge, form an opinion or conclusion about something. Esther chapter 4 verse 13 says, "And Mordecai told them to answer Esther, 'Do not think in your heart that you will escape the king's palace any more than all the other Jews.'" He didn't say, "Do not think in your mind." He said, "Do not think in your heart." The definition here for think is to have a particular opinion, belief, or idea about someone or something. And the Hebrew definition is to devise a strategy, to plan or plot, and to imagine. Now, Mark 7:21 says, "For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders." The word proceed means to originate from, and the Greek definition means to debate, to imagine, or reasoning. Psalm 77:6 says, "I call to remembrance a song, my song in the night. I meditate within my heart, and my spirit makes diligent search." Now, in the King James Version, it says, "I commune." So the Hebrew definition of and commune and dedicate and meditate is essentially the same word in this particular scripture. And it says the Hebrew definition for meditate is to think deeply or carefully about something. And lastly, Luke chapter 2, verse 19 says, "But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart," not in her mind, but in her heart. And to ponder means to consider carefully, contemplate, deliberate, or meditate upon. Now, the word generate means, now, so let's deal with the mind, okay? So, the definition of the mind is the center of consciousness that generates thoughts, feelings, ideas, and perceptions. It also records and stores memories through a collection of information. I'm going to say that again. The mind is the center of consciousness that generates thoughts, feelings, ideas, and perceptions. It also records and stores memories through a collection of information. Now, the definition for the word heart is the place that your emotions occupy and where one's thoughts, will, and decisions originate. So now, dealing with the word with the definition of the word mind, okay, it says that it generates thoughts, feelings, ideas, and perceptions. The mind is where these things originate. I'm sorry, the heart is where they originate, but the mind is where they're generated. The word generate means to cause something, especially an emotion or situation, to arise and come about. Now remember, the heart is the seat of your emotions. It is a place where your emotions dwell or live. One's thoughts originate in the heart. They then go from the heart to the mind, and that's where they're stored. As the mind recalls the thoughts or information that's been stored, it then generates or causes the emotions to arise and stir up in the heart. So everything that you've encountered or dealt with throughout your life, whether good or bad, has been recorded and stored in your mind. So imagine that that as you recall everything that you ever been through in your mind, for every thought you recall, there is an emotion that is stirred up because of it. So now I want to go over some statistics with you. And you can reference this on a website called Peak Dynamics. It says, as humans, we have around 60,000 thoughts every single day. 60,000 thoughts. But what's concerning is that of those thoughts, 75% of them, or 45,000 of those thoughts, are negative thoughts. So imagine 45,000 thoughts. Of the 60,000 thoughts that you have every single day, 45,000 of those thoughts are negative in some way. And then 95% of those thoughts are repetitive. And it's a fact. We get up every day. If you have a job, you work 5 days a week, you get up in the morning every day. You got to get up, got to brush my teeth, got to wash up, got to comb my hair, got to eat some food, got to get on the road, got to check the weather. What's the road conditions? These are thoughts that we have every single day because we're doing pretty much the same thing every day. And most of us are creatures of habit. And so because we're creatures of habit, we're doing the same things pretty much every day. You get up in the morning, it's the same routine. You're thinking the same thoughts. You get on the road, you're thinking about what you're going to have to do at your job. You get to work, you're thinking about what you're going to have to do on your job. And so, yes, I can see how 95% of those thoughts are repetitive. But as they said, the problem is that 75% of those thoughts are negative. Now, they say that this constant barrage of negative and repetitive thoughts can significantly impact our mental health, our happiness, and the overall quality of life. They can lead to increased stress and anxiety, decreased self-esteem, and a general sense of unhappiness and dissatisfaction in life. Moreover, negative thoughts can become deeply ingrained in our minds, making it difficult to change our thought patterns, and break free from negative thinking. This negativity can result in being stuck, unable to move forward, and a lack of motivation to change our circumstances. Sounds like stagnation to me. It results in being stuck, unable to move forward, and a lack of motivation to change our circumstances. And depending on what you've been through, your thoughts alone can be torturous for you. So I want to talk about a group of people in the Bible that those of us who have read the Bible, we've read about them. And these are the Israelites. So I want to talk about their wilderness journey. Now, understand, first of all, that it took the Israelites 40 years to make an 11-day journey. They didn't walk through the wilderness for 40 years. They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. So also keep in mind that prior to them being set free, they were in bondage for 400 years. So those that hadn't already died off, and even those who had died, they were subjected to mental abuse on a daily basis. They were subjected to physical abuse, some of them on a daily basis. They watched family members die right before their eyes. They went through a lot of mental pain and suffering. And this happened for 400 years. Can you imagine how many generations that was? And so there's no wonder that they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Their minds were messed up. 400 years in captivity, and everything they went through, of course, it caused depression, and it caused anxiety, and it caused deep depression. It caused bipolar. It caused a barrage of different mental health illnesses. And so even though they were free physically, they were not free mentally. They were still in bondage. And so this is why you would see them having conversations and saying things like, we should have stayed in Egypt where we had this. They sound like they had it so good, but they didn't. They were in captivity. How can you have a good life and you're in captivity? But in their minds, they were better off in bondage because that's what they were accustomed to. That was their life. So it took them 40 years. They wandered around in the wilderness for 40 years. And this was not a huge, huge area that they were wandering in. I mean, 40 years, you can walk to Paris in 40 years. There was a billionaire um, that walked from where he lived to Paris, and he did it in 5 years. So you can walk a whole lot of places in 40 years. This was an 11-day journey. But because of the condition of their minds, because of the condition of their hearts, everything that they went through, they wandered in this wilderness for 40 years before they were able, and most of them died off. At the end of the day, God wouldn't even allow anyone, I believe that cutoff age was 20 years old. So anyone that was over 20, they died. They didn't even make it in because they had the wrong mindset. And he would not allow them to go in and receive what he had promised them with that mindset. So let's listen to the conversation that took place here. I'm going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 1, and I'm going to deal with verses 6 through 8 for those who want to follow along. And it says, the Lord our God said to us at Horeb, you have stayed long enough at this mountain. So the definition for mountain is a mountain is often associated with a difficult task, a challenge, or the idea of overcoming obstacles. It is also the journey. It is also associated with the journey towards spiritual growth and enlightenment. So basically, the Lord is saying, you have stayed long enough at this place of difficulty, at this place of challenges. You stayed long enough at the idea, at this place of filled with the idea of overcoming obstacles. Okay. Verse 7 says, break camp and advance into the hill country of the Amorites. Go to all the neighboring peoples in the Arabah, in the mountains, in the western foothills, in the Negev, and along the coast, to the land of the Canaanites, and to Lebanon, as far as the great river, the Euphrates. So the word break means to advance suddenly. It is to break is to cause something to separate suddenly, or violently. And the word camp represents anything that has kept you stagnated and without progress. The word advance, we know, means to move forward. So what he's essentially saying is leave your comfort zone, break away from your place of pain and suffering, and move forward. Leave this place of stagnation and achieve God's plan for your life. They had been at this mountain and walking around in this area for 40 years. And God said, you have been here long enough. And he's talking to some of you also. He's telling you, you've been where you are long enough. You've been in your place of stagnation long enough. Move forward from this place of stagnation that you've been in and achieve God's plan for your life. So now I want to look at a different scenario, totally different person. And this is the woman with the issue of blood. She was in a place of stagnation as well, not by any choice of her own, not because of anything that she had done wrong. She was dealing with an issue. Now, Jesus was on his way to heal a little girl. And it's really interesting that the little girl was about the age of 12 And the woman had been suffering with an issue of blood for right around 12 years. And so verse 25, I'm going to go to Mark chapter 5, verse 25 through 29. Once again, if you want to follow along. And it says, and a woman was there. Now, on his way to heal Jairus' daughter, it says, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. Now imagine a person that is consistently bleeding every single day without fail for 12 years. Now, it says bleeding. I believe it was more hemorrhaging. And I mean, even if you just bleeding regularly, just a regular flow of blood for 12 years, that's bad enough. But if you're hemorrhaging, imagine the effect that it had not only on her physical body, but on her mentally. Now, it says she had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors, not one doctor, but many doctors. She spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she got worse. They took all of her money. She didn't get any better. She only grew worse. Now, Leviticus chapter 15, verses 25 through 27 talks about the laws and everything that goes into the dynamics, all the dynamics that goes into a situation such as a woman having an issue of blood. And according to Leviticus 15, 25 through 27, excessive blood flow made a woman ceremonially unclean. So any furniture she touched was unclean. If anyone touched anything that she touched, they were unclean. And so she had to deal with this. Now, this lady came to a place where she decided to just go for it, to just do what she needed to do. And so I'm going to delve into that just a little bit more a little later. But I want to point out some things that she went through while she was dealing with this issue of blood for 12 years. She was very alone. No one wanted to be around her. She couldn't go out into public. She couldn't be hugged by her family. She was quarantined from everyone that she loved and knew for 12 years, even her children, if she had some. Imagine you on earth, you have all of these people that you know, but because you are having an issue that you have no control over, that you've gone to many doctors to try and fix, they took all of your money, you got no better, you only got worse. Now you're all alone to still deal with it for 12 years. Can you imagine the mental pain and suffering that this woman had to deal with? Not only was she considered unclean, but she also felt unclean. Imagine she did. She's bleeding every day. There's no way that she could clean herself enough because, even after she cleaned herself, the blood is still flowing. And not only that, she had to deal with the logistics of having clean clothes and linen for 12 years with a constant flow of blood. She tried to get well. She went to many doctors over the years. She spent everything she had, but nothing worked. She was tired, worn out, weak, and very lonely. If you are bleeding constantly every day for 12 years, I'm willing to bet that you're pretty much on the brink of death. I'm surprised she even lasted 12 years. It had to be by the grace of God, because imagine how much blood she lost over 12 years. She had no one to talk to for 12 whole years but herself and the Lord, if she knew him. But she has one thing going for herself, and you might find it odd or it may be even crazy when I first say this, but what she had going for herself was that she was desperate. And sometimes desperation can be a good thing, because desperation keeps you from becoming complacent, and it also keeps you from having self-pity on pity parties, like some of us love to have. We like to have our pity parties. She was desperate. If you're desperate, you're not going to be complacent, because you need to have some things happen. If you're desperate, you ain't thinking about a pity party, because depending on what's going on, you're trying to get out of this situation that you're in. Now, because she had an issue of blood, and because of her being ceremonially unclean, she was not allowed to go out into the public. Remember that. But because she heard about Jesus, she made up in her mind, I have got to touch this man. I've got to take a chance. They knew what she looked like. They knew she was unclean. For every person that she touched while she was in this crowd of people, because, it was a crowd. Everybody was touching everybody. And all of these people were trying to get to Jesus, but so was she. So while she's in the midst of these people, she's touching all of them. And up to the point where she touched Jesus and got healed, everybody that she touched became unclean. So had someone recognized her, she could have been in a lot of trouble. But she came to a point where she said, you know what? I don't care what I'm going through. I don't care what might happen. I am going to take a chance, because what do I have to lose? Because if I don't get to him, I'm going to die anyway, because I'm going to continue to bleed for the rest of my life. Sometimes we have to become desperate so that we can move from our stuck and stagnant place. Are you desperate enough? How bad do you want to move from your situation? How bad do you want to, get rid of your issue? Have you become desperate enough to go after Jesus so you can touch him? Now, we can't touch him physically, but we can certainly have a relation. If you have a relationship with him, you can touch him through prayer. You can touch him through having a relationship with him. So she just went for it. And I'm going to read the end result. So she took a chance, as I said. She went out in public. She didn't want to stay where she was at anymore. She didn't have anything to lose. And this was her chance to be set free from her bondage. So she went for it. Now, this type of prolonged illness can cause mental impairment as well. And I'm sure she was deeply depressed. She was humiliated. She had a lack of self-esteem. It was a lot of things going on with her. And I'm sure that every day the devil was talking to her, because she spent 12 years by herself. She had no one to talk to. So he had plenty of time to talk to her. Now, verse 27 says, when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. Verse 28 says, because she thought to herself, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt better in her body, that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my clothes? You see the people crowding against you, the disciples answered, and yet you can ask who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. It wasn't just the fact that she touched his cloak that healed her. You guys do know this. It wasn't just the fact that she went out and she was among this crowd that healed her. It was her faith that healed her. And it's going to be our faith that heals us. We can touch Jesus all day long, whether it be it in prayer, we can have the greatest relationship with him. But if we have no faith to be healed, you're not going to be healed. I remember during the middle part of last year, I was dealing with some things financially, trying to figure out how I was going to do this, how I was going to do that, like we do. Because no matter how much faith we say we have, there's those times when we forget God exists. And so we start looking to ourselves to fix the situation. And so I'm sitting here in my living room. I'm like, well, how am I going to do this? And how am I going to do that? And this is going on and this could happen. And the Lord said to me in third person, and he said it very clearly. He said, where is your faith in God? And I sat up and I was like, ooh, that hurt. The Lord just asked me, where is your faith in God? That's what I said. And he asked me that question because he needed me to think. I have seen God work so many miracles right in my own home. My home was like a place for miracles. I've experienced some things that were jaw-dropping moments that had me walking around for 2 weeks going, oh my God. Yet the Lord had to ask me, where is your faith in God? Because in the midst of my turmoil, in the midst of what I was going through, I didn't consider that I serve a God whom with all things are possible. I had the audacity to sit there and try to think about how I was going to handle it. And he just quickly reminded me, did you forget about me? Did you forget the God factor? Did you forget what I'm able to do? And so a little while after that, I got on my knees and prayed. And I'm telling you, that day, he fixed everything for me. Bills that I owed, the creditor paid for me. Bills that I owed, the amount drastically reduced. Faith. So she had the faith to be healed, and she was able to be healed only because of her faith. Now, I want to close here. Well, I want to give you guys a testimony of my own, and then I'm going to close after that testimony is over. And this testimony is about me being stuck in my stagnant place. Okay. So I say halfway through last year, I was dealing with a situation where I had a lot of unforgiveness in my heart for probably right under 10 people because I had a lot of opposition. Most of these people, probably all of them except for one, really, I had never done anything to. And yeah, I did some things, said some things. I'm human. And we all have, those moments where we say things, and do things that later on we regret. But I did. And even though I wanted to forgive these people, it was not in me to do it. Because forgiving is hard enough as it is. But when you have the same people that you're trying to forgive constantly coming at you before you can forgive the first thing, it just makes it all that much more difficult. And the Lord knew that I wanted to forgive him, but it just wasn't in me to do it. I couldn't do it. I was tore up from the floor up. Lord, seriously, I was. And so one day I was on my knees in prayer and I was talking to the Lord about not only that, but another situation that was before me, some things that I believed I was entitled to have. And God told me, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to give it to you. You're not going to get it. And I said, Lord, I throw myself at the mercy of your court. What do I need to do to straighten this situation out? And he let me know, I'm not going to give you what you want. However, I will tell you this. Your heart is not totally surrendered to me. And you need to fix that. So I was like, wow. I'm like, okay. This is God. He can't lie. So, I mean, I knew my heart wasn't totally surrendered to him, because whether it be a relationship or even situations sometimes and things, anything that we give that part of our heart that belonged to God, we're surrendering to something else. And God is a jealous God, and he wasn't pleased with me. And so when he told me what I needed to do to fix that, I fixed it. I got my relationship with my Heavenly Father right that night. Not the next night, but that night. But the next night, I was on my knees in prayer again. And when I got done praying, I got into bed. And the last thing I said to him was, Lord, I know your power. I've seen your power. Show me your power. And I went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning, and I had my head on the pillow, and I found myself I saw myself having a conversation in my mind with someone. And I said, Lord, are you telling me that I'm going to start communicating with this person again? Because this was one of the people that I had cut all communication off with, because I needed to protect my environment so that God could work on my heart. And as God does so many times, he allowed me to know all at one time, in that instant, daughter, not only are you going to communicate with that person again, but all of the garbage that was in your heart before you went to sleep is gone. I fixed it. You did what you needed to do, and I did what you needed me to do, because God wanted to help me from the first day I started asking him. I had been praying almost a year, asking God to help me to walk in forgiveness, help me to walk in love towards those people. But once I got my relationship right with him, he did it instantly. I literally had no pain, no ought, no hard feelings, nothing in my heart towards any person on earth. When I woke up the next morning, it was all gone. I cannot tell you how much freedom I felt, how liberating that was. Now, God has given me the ability to forgive one person in the past in a sum of 2 weeks. And I thought that was great. But almost 10 people overnight, immediately. This is where God wants us to be. He don't want us to be stuck. I was stuck. Because see, I don't know why, but those of us that say we know God, even though his word, he says in his word, I change if not. He said, heaven and earth will pass away, but not one jot of my word will pass away. Yet somehow people believe that God is going to change his word for them. They think they're so special. That he loved them so much that he would laugh at them. He said not one jot of his word will pass away. That means his word will never change. And he said in his word, if you do not forgive those who have sinned against you, I will not forgive you. He didn't say I can't. He said I won't. And he's not. So for every sin that we commit every day, for as long as we have unforgiveness in our heart, God is not forgiving us. That's a bad place to be in. It's a bad place to be in. I knew this, and I truly wanted to forgive these people. But because of what I was dealing with, it just was not in me to do it. I desperately sought God and asked him to help me. But because I wasn't lined up with him, he couldn't even help me. He couldn't. Forgiveness is not for the person that needs to be forgiven. Forgiveness is for you. It causes you to be stuck, not them. They're at home sleeping just fine. They won't skip a beat. Their entire life will be everything that they want it to be. But you're going to be the one that's stuck if you don't forgive them. You're not going to hurt them by not forgiving them. You're going to hurt you. And so this is why it's imperative that we seek God and ask him to help us to forgive people. You're in bondage if you're in unforgiveness. You're in bondage here. You're in bondage here. And it's not God's will for us to be in bondage. He said, I have come to give you life and that more abundantly. He wants us to move forward. We cannot receive what He has promised us. We cannot live the life that He's ordained for us to live if we are stuck in a place of unforgiveness, stuck in a place in the past. The past and future cancels each other out. You can't have both of them. It has to be one or the other. Either you're going to be stuck in the past or you're going to let that stuff go and you're going to move forward. And I know that it's sometimes easier said than done. I've had things that happened to me when I was a kid. I was molested by 3 different family members. 2 of them are gone on. One of them is still living, but I put that stuff behind me and I have a good relationship with that person even today. So I'm not sitting here telling you about something that I heard about. I'm telling you what I know. Was it easy for me to put it? No, it wasn't. But I resolved in my mind that I'm not going to hell for nobody. I resolved in my mind that I'm not going to be stuck in my past for nobody because that was hurting me. It wasn't hurting them. They didn't lose one day of sleep. None. So I want to close here. I pray that there's something that I have said that was able to help you in some kind of way. And I look forward to the next time that, you know, we talk or, and so I pray that you will go to the Lord in prayer and ask Him to help you move out of that place of stagnation. So I look forward to the series that I'm going to be teaching on. I believe it's going to be of a great help to you. And God bless you all. And I'll see you next time.